Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of
Hey Yo
Radio, where we pick apart the NXT and main roster runs of former NXT talents. My name is Marc Scott. I'm joined by Scott Tyson. What's going on, Scott? How are you this week?
Mark, I'm doing good. Still in a little bit of recovery mode after the 4th holiday, but I'm doing okay. I'm ready to do this.
Last week, we looked at someone who had made 2 stays on both the NXT and WWE main rosters. This week, we're going to flip the coin and look at someone who spent an astoundingly small amount of time in NXT before being rocket-strapped and sent up to the main roster. He's here to fight you, and apparently also stun you now. I give to you, KO, Kevin Owens. For Kevin Owens' entire run in both NXT and the WWE main roster, he has had the singular entrance music. It's called Simply Fight, and it's composed by CFOs, and like a lot of other music composed by them, it fits Owens incredibly well. It's hard sounding, and it gives you the feeling somebody's about to get their asses beaten, which means it gets the job done when trying to complement the Owens character. He's unapologetic, takes names, and kicks asses, and to me anyway, that's what this music says. I like it a lot.
You know, we talked about it last week during our Emma episode. Sometimes it's the music that makes the character. Sometimes the character makes the music. In this case, it's a really good marriage of both. It helps not just portray who Kevin Owens is, but it really exemplifies who he is. That he's not there just to entertain. He's there to kick ass.
So getting into Kevin Owens here, born May 7th, 1984, and raised in Maryville, I believe that's how he says it, in the Quebec province of Canada, KO is of French-Canadian descent and speaks French as his first language. Interestingly enough, he learned how to speak English as a teenager by mimicking everything he heard while watching WWE Monday Night Raw. After reading that, I can't help but be reminded of the John Cusack movie Better Off Dead, where the couple of Korean drag racers learned English from watching the ABC Sports broadcaster Howard Cosell and spoke in the same voice inflections and everything throughout the movie. From an early age, he knew he wanted to be a professional wrestler after watching a tape of the WrestleMania 11 WWF Championship match between Shawn Michaels and Diesel with his father. Again, that kind of surprises me considering I didn't particularly like that match. But I digress.
Well, you know, to each their own. I will say this. Thank God Kevin Owens grew up in the time frame that he did. So he could at least learn some normal verbiage by watching WWE TV. Thank God he's not growing up now.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
If he learned to talk like they do now on the main roster, he'd have no social life, no anything. People would run from him. Like, what's wrong with that guy?
Yeah. At the young age of 14, Kevin's parents allowed him to begin training with Serge, I'm sorry if I mess up this name, Jodoin, a wrestler based in Quebec. And the following year, he began training with Jacques Rougeau and Terry Taylor, who he would credit as his main trainer, and had his first match on his 16th birthday. Owens would continue training and wrestling for Rougeau's promotion for the next 2 years. While venturing out of the Canadian wrestling scene, he would wrestle for a number of promotions, winning championship gold along the way, while also making seemingly a lifelong friend and a masked wrestler known then as El Generico, who we know now as Sami Zayn.
That's who that was?
Yeah, huh. Never heard about that?
I always wondered who was under the mask.
During his run as champion in International Wrestling Syndicate, he became the first IWS champion to defend the title internationally, defeating Roderick Strong on October 30th, 2004's at Jersey All Pro Wrestling event in Rahway, New Jersey, the beautiful Rahway Rec Center. If you've ever been to that building, I wouldn't say it's terrible, but like there's no air conditioning. So if you're there in the summer watching a wrestling show, yeah, it's kind of hot.
Well, as a full-figured guy, when you said no air conditioning, it immediately fell off my wrestling bucket list of places to go to because I don't like to sweat if I don't have to.
Yeah, I hear you there.
So that's going to drop it down my list. Thanks for sharing. I did not know that.
Yeah, I saw an Evolve show in that building. It was pretty hot, but it was a great show. Daniel Bryan wrestled on it. We've spoken about that in the past. That was a good show.
Well, you don't go to CZW shows there?
No, I do not.
Okay, all right, good. Good to get that out.
Not really my thing.
Not in mutilation, huh?
Not really.
Okay, all right. Well, to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah. He would spend the next 10 years wrestling for Combat Zone Wrestling, just like you said, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and then Ring of Honor, where he would take on names like Chris Hero, a.k.a. Cassius Ohno, Chris Sabin, Necro Butcher, Masato Tanaka, AJ Styles, Nigel McGuinness, and the future Seth Rollins, Tyler Black, Matt Hardy, and Brian Kendrick, and Shinsuke Nakamura. It was during his stop in Ring of Honor where he would cross paths with Jim Cornette, who seemingly wasn't exactly a fan of Kevin Owens' look, as he thought he should, quote, lose some weight, buy some new clothes, trim the beard up, and look a little neater. Cornette also seems to believe that French-Canadian wrestlers have always been a pain in the ass, except for Pat Patterson. However, in the end, Owens kind of ended up doing what Cornette had asked, only he did it in WWE and is very successful now, which Cornette likes to hang on his cap on.
Again, Cornette's old school. And, there's a certain way of look and presentation that he holds people to a standard to, and there's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. Just means that's what he grew up and understands. It sells, people buy tickets, they gravitate towards that. So I get where he's coming from, but I'm glad Kevin was able to address some of those things.
Sure. I mean, just like Vince McMahon, Cornette has what he looks for, Vince has what he looks for. I'm sure that there are some similarities between those. So... but we're not here to talk about KO before he joined WWE, so let's skip ahead to August 12th, 2014. WWE announced that KO, previously wrestling under a shoot name of Kevin Steen, had signed with them and was due to report to their developmental system NXT on August 25th. His new ring name had only his surname changed to Owens, a tribute to his son Owen, who he himself named after Owen Hart. I can certainly relate, as one of my sons is named the same way. NXT began airing promotional videos starting on November 20th, in which he had stated that while wrestling over the last 14 years, he had faced and formed friendships with several current WWE and NXT wrestlers. But despite these friendships, he would now fight anyone and everyone because fighting was the best way he could provide for his family. A sentiment that I always loved from the start with his honesty and realism. Imagine that, a wrestler who wrestles, aka fights, for a living to provide for his family. I mean, this stuff just writes itself,
Imagine someone you can connect with and understand right where they're coming from, because, hey, that could be me. If I had athletic ability and could take a beating, sure, I could do that. Neither of which is the case. But, yeah, it resonates with the fan base. It's simple. It's see-spot run. It works.
Owens made his debut on December 11th. 2014 NXT TakeOver R Evolution at Full Sail Live with a victory over CJ Parker. No, not Pamela Anderson's character from Baywatch. Rather, it was CJ Parker who wrestled in NXT and elsewhere on the independents as Juice Robinson. During the match, Owens would suffer a legit broken nose.
Looking back on that match, I'm not sure that CJ Parker, the soon-to-be Juice Robinson, may have been the best opponent for him. But it was yeah. I remember watching that match going, oh, he's bleeding. Yeah, he's hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, he worked around it, and the proof was in the pudding. But I'm not sure that I would have chosen him if we had a second go at it.
No. But later that night, when former El Generico, now known as Sami Zayn, won the NXT Championship from Adrian Neville, now known as Pac in another wrestling promotion, Owens came to the ring to congratulate his longtime friend, only to turn on him and powerbomb him onto the ring apron, which looked and still looks, every time that he uses it, like a very brutal move to take.
You can't see it, but I'm shaking my head with my eyes closed, just like, oh, I can see it. and it still hurts my body just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Man, talk about inserting somebody right away. And we've talked about this over the last few episodes. You know, they bring in people who aren't newbies. They've got experience on the independent circuit. They still want them to work the WWE style, but they have talent and ability, and they're, let's say, more advanced than some of the younger trainees. Man, he was put in a prime spot, and what an angle.
Yeah.
Finally, Sami Zayn climbs the mountain. He does everything the right way, and wouldn't you know it, his best friend, quote unquote, is there, and he turns on him. Man, talk about going from one thing to the next. It was a thing of beauty.
It was. I mean, if anything shouts like, "This is our Sting," yeah, that's it.
Poor Sammy. I had never put two and two together, but you're right.
Yeah. A week later, he's wrestling Adrian Neville, former NXT champion, on NXT television to a double countout and powerbombing Neville onto the ring apron after the match. And after another post-match attack by Owens on Zayn on the January 14th, 2015 episode of NXT television, after Zayn successfully defended the NXT title, an irate Zayn demanded a match against Owens. And wouldn't you know it, Owens refused to wrestle unless it was for the NXT Championship. So Zayn agreed to a title match, and it was set for the February 11th, 2015, 2 months to the day after his debut on the Black and Gold brand, NXT TakeOver Rival. And the main event of the show would see Owens take the title after a referee stoppage following repeated powerbombs that made it impossible for Zayn to continue. So, I mean, you're looking at him, he's showing up, he's brand new on the scene, he's getting his name in there, he's attacking the champion, and he's got a title match, and he takes the title. I mean, 2 months he's in, and he's already got the title. The top title in the brand.
Go back on the network, watch these couple of matches that Mark talked about. They're brutal, they're stiff, they're believable. But you want to create a heel persona? You want people to believe? Go out there and start destroying people legitimately. Kevin Owens is not the biggest guy in the room, not the tallest guy, but he was booked to be believable. And that's how you get it done. It still works today.
And on top of that, you know, you said about Zayn, you know, Zayn had been just gunning for that title for the longest time. And then finally when he wins it, here his best friend turns on him, and 2 months later, he's given up the title to his friend. You know?
Yeah, you called him Sting. I guess we could also throw Tommy Dreamer out there as well.
Yeah.
Finally reaching the pinnacle of success, only to lose it shortly thereafter. It makes him an even more sympathetic babyface. But man, it ensconces Kevin Owens as he's not just a threat. He's a threat for a long period of time. He's not a flash in the pan who's a big name that showed up and then took a loss and he was out the door.
Mm-hmm. So Owens followed up the title victory with wins over former NXT champion Adrian Neville and Alex Riley, both in non-title matches over the next month on NXT television. His next challenger for the title was Finn Balor on the March 25th episode of NXT television, who he would defeat as well. And on the April 22nd episode of NXT television, he's defeating Alex Riley once again in a non-title match. And with KO racking up all these victories, his next match would be with his former friend, Sami Zayn, in a rematch of their title match from the NXT TakeOver Rival. This time they would battle to a no contest after once again, Owens continued to beat down and injure Zayn, which brought out the debuting Samoa Joe to Zayn's aid. So once again, you've got Kevin Owens beating the crap out of Sami Zayn, and to the point where he needs help from somebody else, whether it's the officials, and now it's Samoa Joe.
And going back and looking at the talent they had at any point there, look at the names you just listed over the last 6 months that he was interacting and working with. My God, that's an embarrassment of riches. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Yeah, tensions between Owens and Joe would continue to build throughout the next month. But on the May 27th episode of NXT television, Owens defeated Solomon Crowe in another non-title match, which, if we remember, Solomon Crowe turned out to be, what the heck is his name now in Impact, right? He's wrestling.
Sami Callihan?
Sami Callihan, yeah. He's still with Impact, I believe, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So around this time, something interesting began happening. It was reported that WWE had taken notice that Kevin Owens' merchandise sales have been doing incredibly well. And this is the really interesting thing here. Kevin Owens had one T-shirt, and it was a T-shirt that had KO written on it, but it was made to look like as if it was duct tape, making the KO name or letters. Apparently, that T-shirt did incredibly well, especially considering he was wrestling on a brand that didn't even have traditional television outlet and was only available to WWE Network subscribers. So with Kevin Owens being such a hot commodity, Scott will inform you later on, in his early run-ins with John Cena, and Owens made a few jumps over to the main roster to wrestle on Raw, Smackdown, main event during his time as NXT champion. But back in NXT, on the June 17th episode of NXT Television, he wrestled Samoa Joe to a no contest in a non-title match in which the two continued to brawl until NXT officials had to separate them. So, I mean, he's got some incredible talents that he's working with here, and not that he really needs a lot of help being made to look good, but I mean, he's got the gift of gab. It's all coming together for him, and it's working, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the July 1st episode of NXT Television, he's tagging with Rhino in a losing effort against the team of Finn Balor and Samoa Joe. But clearly his time with the NXT title had put a spotlight on the brand, as when WWE takes a trip to Japan on July 4th, 2015, a hell of a way to celebrate the American Independence Day, and showcases it as Brock Lesnar, the Beast in the East. But Kevin Owens is there, defending the NXT title in a match with the Demon Finn Balor, where it's explained that the amount of time that Finn had spent in Japan wrestling prior to coming to NXT, and how this was in many ways a homecoming for him, as he defeated Owens for the NXT title, ending his reign at 143 days. So he didn't have the title significantly long, but like we've said, he's got a lot of really great guys that he's working with all through this.
He accomplished a great deal in a very short amount of time.
He certainly did.
There are men and women who don't have that type of career, and they wrestle for 10 and 15 years and make that kind of impact.
Yeah. So clearly, with him losing the NXT title and his forays to the main roster over the last few months, his time in the Black and Gold brand is soon coming to an end. On the July 29th episode of NXT Television, he's defeating Martin Stone, who you would now know as Danny Burch, in a throwaway match. And just over 3 weeks later, Owens is wrestling his final match in NXT at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn in his rematch for the NXT Championship in a ladder match against Finn Balor, which he understandably lost, as he's headed off to the main roster following this defeat. So during his time in NXT, Kevin Owens is 8-3-3, thanks to Darren's win-loss official stats provider for Hey Yo Radio. And during his 255 days as member of the NXT roster, 143 of them, about 56%, he was the top dog, holding the NXT title while also making appearances on Raw, SmackDown, main event, while also wrestling on main roster pay-per-views and takeover specials. Overall, Owens' stay in NXT lasts an astoundingly short 9 months, as WWE seemed to be quite surprised as to how quickly the fans would take to him. And it apparently was decided that they should strike while the iron's hot and take advantage of this seemingly overnight popularity, which clearly wasn't overnight. But to those running WWE, well, you know they don't pay attention to the people wearing team fight shirts back in those days. So Owens came in with great backstory, a believable character, and certainly a gift for gab. In terms of rating his stay in NXT, how do you not give them an A+? In terms of strapping a rocket to his back and holding on while he does his part in getting the brand exposure while pulling double duty working for the main roster while NXT champion.
I don't know that there's any other option for a grade. I mean, that was an intense, very compact 9-month period of time. He did everything that was asked. He did it believably, and he's pulling double and triple duty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my God, that's a career for most folk. He did that in 9 months.
I mean, one of the things that I'm sorry to cut you off, but one of the things that that was definitely his calling card coming in was he had a gift for the gab. I put that in there. He credits Steve Austin with that. He and Sami Zayn, while I forget who they were working for at the time, but they had a chance run-in with Steve Austin in a Dallas airport. And he approached Austin and just asked him, is there anything that you could suggest just to help me like get a leg up on the industry and stuff? And he said, never stop talking. Just talk trash and it'll work for you. And don't you know that's what he does.
In spite of the fact that the main roster tries to cookie cutter everyone and present them the very same way, which is why you don't have stars like we wish they did. Stars that have some individuality. Look, this is repeatable. There's a tried and true method that works for people. People like people who talk trash and back it up. And Kevin Owens was given that opportunity, and look what the results were yielded. Yeah,
like I said, I mean, I don't think that you could have possibly used them any stronger than they did in that time period. The 9 months in and out of NXT is just incredible. And even at that, some of that time in those 9 months, he's in NXT, but he's also not. It's just, it's insane. We've never seen anybody before or since with a stay in NXT like he did.
No, it's a very isolated case. But again, I think that's the specialness that the NXT brand brings. There are all different variations of ways to operate on the NXT brand and be successful. And he showed another way.
Yeah, he certainly did. But before I hand the reins over to Scott here for KO's main roster run, I want to take a moment to appeal to our faithful listeners here.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
We're currently available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, PW Insider Elite, and also on our YouTube channel, available at heyyoradio.com. Basically anywhere and everywhere you like to get your podcasts. So please do us a solid, like, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. All of that helps us out, makes us more visible to the masses. So please, if you like our content, share it around, get us some more ears. Thank you, and now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
And with that, I want to quote the Rolling Stone magazine, specifically one of their writers, Kenny Herzog, who wrote in the July 2015 edition of Rolling Stone in reference to Kevin Owens. You can love him or hate him. You can't deny his impact on the first 6 months of 2015 or wonder how high he'll climb by year's end. It's wrestling, folks. It's Kevin Owens. And I can't think of a better way to start talking about his main roster run. Kevin Owens would make an unannounced main roster debut on the May 18th episode of Monday Night Raw by responding to John Cena's United States Championship Open Challenge. It was sort of the summer of championship challengers. And rather than compete in the match, Kevin Owens did something different. He just straight up attacked John Cena. Stomped on the U.S. title in a complete show of disrespect.
So awesome.
Yeah, but it wasn't disrespect for the United States title in any way, shape, or form. He was expressing his feelings of being overlooked for years on the independent circuit. Again, we're talking about his WWE stuff, but if you ever want to go back and look at his ROH or CZW or IWS or PWG, there's a lot of good stuff out there for him and the work that he did. But he did feel overlooked. And who wouldn't? You've been wrestling for 20 years and all of a sudden people act like you're just fresh out of the fields. Sure. No, that's not the way it is. And so you could see a lot of that emotion coming through. And again, we talk about people being able to emote and to show their emotions, and he certainly is very well gifted in that.
But back to what you were saying about stepping on the U.S. title. Now, the thing about that is, to me, that this is the way I saw it back in those days. And you can go back to our old podcasts. we were recording during the time that he was doing all this, and such a huge fan of Kevin Owens. I couldn't wait to do this episode. When he stepped on that U.S. title and he held that NXT title up to the sky, to me, that was, your title is garbage. This is the one that matters. You know, that's the way I saw it.
And isn't that, and I'm going to use this term loosely, but isn't that what you want your champion to say and how you want them to feel? They're representing you and your brand. And yes, I do understand it's a work. I do understand they're all owned under the same corporate umbrella. But the reality is, if you don't think you're the best, if you don't think what you do is the best, it's not going to come through. You can't fake that. And Kevin Owens, he's not faking it. This is who he is and what he believes. And it would provide a setting for not a title match, but actually a non-title match between Owens and Cena at the Elimination Chamber on May 31st. And Kevin Owens would shock the WWE Universe. He won the match by pinfall. He pinned John Cena with the pop-up powerbomb. On the heels of that outcome,
can't believe that happened. That was incredible.
I watched it live, and I'm like, no way. He's kicking out at 2. And when he didn't kick out at 3, I'm like, oh, my God.
I lost my mind that night when that happened. Oh, that's good TV there, my friend. That's good TV.
You know what it's like when you book your program in such a way that you can still shock people? There's still an edge of doubt over who might win the match. It makes for much more compelling television.
Yeah.
On the heels of that, they had a rematch between the two. It would take place in June at Money in the Bank with John Jack Cena, this time emerging victorious. I mean, after all, this one was for the championship, so we couldn't have Kevin win. In the wake of the finish, though, an incensed Kevin Owens would powerbomb Cena onto the ring apron, much like we had seen him do in NXT to Sami Zayn, to Adrian Neville. But undeterred, Owens would challenge Cena one more time to a match for the United States Championship. That match would take place at WWE Battleground. But again, John Cena would emerge victorious, winning by submission this time, and thereby pretty much ending the Kevin Owens feud, his first feud on the main roster. And after the loss to Cena, you could see how WWE tends to treat their performers. As Owens began to be slid down the card a little bit, he would enter into a new feud, this time with Cesaro. During that time, he would also appear on Smackdown. He would appear on Main Event as well, defeating R-Truth. But his series with Cesaro was a two-match series, with one being at SummerSlam 2015, which Owens would walk out with the victory. And then on an episode of Raw 8 days later, Kevin Owens would again win that match, thereby winning that feud. So you could already see that, you know, it's the WWE way of doing things. It's not like NXT where they keep you strong, keep you strong, keep you strong. It's up and down, up and down. And this would be kind of how Kevin Owens is treated. After about a month of flailing aimlessly, Kevin Owens would finally reap the first tangible benefit of his brief time on the main roster, and that took place on September 20th at WWE Night of Champions. Exercising the demons of the last several months, Kevin Owens defeated the Ryback to capture his first singles title on the main roster, the Intercontinental. I love you, Daniel Bryan. To win the Intercontinental Championship. KO would begin to be featured immediately as a larger player, and on the October 3rd WWE Network special live from Madison Square Garden, Owens would have his first title defense against Y2J Chris Jericho. Owens would walk out with the victory. Then on October 25th at Hell in the Cell, Kevin Owens was successful again in defending the IC strap in a rematch against the Ryback. With momentum clearly on his side, Kevin Owens would enter into a tournament to fill the vacant WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Owens would defeat the former Florida Gator Titus O'Neil in the first round, and he would defeat Neville in the next round on his way to the ultimate prize that was to be contested at Survivor Series that year. Having advanced to the Final Four, unfortunately, though, Kevin Owens would face Dean Ambrose, and he would fall a little bit short. He would succumb to him in the semifinals. But this created a ready-made feud, an opportunity for Kevin Owens to go after Dean Ambrose. But unfortunately, that did not turn out to be a wise career move for him because Kevin Owens would drop the Intercontinental Championship to Dean Ambrose at TLC, affectionately known as Table, Ladders, and Chairs, on December 13th, which ended... What's that?
Whatever happened to that guy?
I don't know. Anyway, his reign would end at exactly 84 days, so his first title reign was over on the main roster. Going into 2016, though, Kevin Owens seemed to be ready to vault into the upper echelon of the WWE Universe. However, he mounted several unsuccessful attempts to unseat Dean Ambrose for the championship, the Intercontinental Championship, on multiple occasions. On January 24th, 2016, Owens made his third Big Four pay-per-view debut by entering the 2016 Royal Rumble match at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Coincidentally, his match highlight that night was he eliminated the also debuting the phenomenal AJ Styles. Would eliminate him over the top rope and then fling his arms outward, mocking AJ Styles. It was
terrific.
It was a terrific moment.
So great.
But while he's standing there celebrating and enjoying himself, the music would hit, and out would come former foe Sami Zayn, who would get a small measure of revenge and eliminate Kevin Owens from that match that night. That was a really good sequence, I thought.
It really was. I remember that because, again, at that time, I was still watching the main roster. And even now, I still watch the pay-per-views. But I remember going into that and thinking, like, oh, man, AJ Styles is supposed to be here tonight. And, there he made his debut. And it's like, well, who's going to take out AJ? And it ended up being Owens. It's just like, oh, I can't wait to see them, like, go down that road. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, if memory serves right, AJ
phenomenal,
came out third. That's what the picture said. Yeah, when he came out, I believe he came out third and had a good showing in it. But man, again, Kevin Owens, they're finding ways to kind of differentiate him and showcase him. I thought that was a really good showcase moment in that sequence. But unfortunately, his career would go off track very quickly because on the following night on Raw, Owens would enter a feud with Dolph Ziggler. Owens and Ziggler would exchange victories over each other on back-to-back episodes of Raw. So red warning lights are going off when we see that happen. But all was not lost, however, because on the February 15th episode of Monday Night Raw, Kevin Owens would reclaim his championship, the Intercontinental Championship belt, for a second time by defeating Dean Ambrose, Stardust, not sure whatever happened to him, Tyler Breeze, and again Dolph Ziggler. And what would be, I'm sure everyone listening here, their favorite title competition, a fatal five-way match. Kevin Owens would be off to the races immediately, and at WWE Fastlane, Kevin Owens successfully defended his Intercontinental strap against Dolph Ziggler, effectively ending that feud, so he could be unencumbered from that particular opponent.
Thank God.
Dolph, you said it. With Dolph in the rearview mirror, Owens was beginning to rebuild some of the momentum that he had the previous year. He was well positioned going into the showcase of the Immortals. And with all that backstory, at WrestleMania 32, Owens would debut in grand style. Yep, he lost his title against Zack Ryder in a 7-way ladder match. Just let that sink in for a minute. No knock on Zack Ryder by any means.
No, not at all. We love Zack Ryder.
I love Zack Ryder, but you can kind of see the up and down booking and the viewing that WWE would use on Kevin Owens through the years. And something you're going to want to file in the back of your mind because you're going to hear this a lot in this recitation. Owens was not given a rematch. Apparently, he didn't qualify for one. He was only the former champion. But instead, he resumed his feud with longtime rival Sami Zayn after attacking him on the next night's Raw. This unprovoked attack led to a match between the two at WWE Payback. There's another one of those really great WWE historical pay-per-views. And that night, Kevin Owens would defeat Sami Zayn to get out some of his frustration. The good news is at Extreme Rules, Kevin Owens finally got his rematch, but again, not in a traditional style. He was forced to face Sami Zayn, Cesaro, and The Miz in a fatal 4-way match for the Intercontinental Championship and came up short as The Miz managed to score the pin on Cesaro. Owens, his MO had become don't look back, and on the following night on Raw, Owens would defeat the aforementioned phenomenal AJ Styles to qualify to be in the 2016 Money in the Bank ladder match. Unfortunately, Kevin would not be successful at that particular pay-per-view debut. And during the 2016 WWE draft, the wrestling god smiled on Kevin Owens, and he was drafted to Monday Night Raw. And at the 2016 edition of WWE Battleground, which took place on July 24th, Kevin Owens would announce his position on the Raw roster, his upper elevation, by being pinned by Sami Zayn. That leads us into SummerSlam on August 21st. Owens would team up with Chris Jericho to defeat a couple of NXT former alums, Enzo Amore and Big Cass. And on the next episode of Raw, the August 22nd edition, Owens would defeat the former NXT champion Neville to earn a spot for the vacant Universal Championship. It was a fatal four-way elimination match the following week. And on the August 29th episode of Raw, Kevin Owens would climb the ladder in defeating Big Cass, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins after interference from Triple H.
You gotta love how Big Cass is part of this match.
My memory doesn't explain exactly why, but yes.
Nothing says big time like facing him in like a title match for the top title.
Okay, big match, Big Cass. I think we understand where this was going.
Yeah.
That night, Kevin Owens would capture.
Oh, we know where he went.
Oh dear.
We certainly know where he went.
We do indeed. Kevin Owens would capture his first world title on the main roster. Now, we'd seen previously Kevin Owens be yo-yoed, but he would successfully defend his title against Seth Rollins in a singles match at WWE Clash of Champions on September 25th. And then they would compete in a Hell in the Cell match at, can you guess what kind of pay-per-view?
Great Balls of Fire?
Close. Damn. It was actually Hell in a Cell. They had a Hell in a Cell match at Hell in a Cell, of all things. And that took place on October 30th.
I bet you it was a hell of a cell, huh?
It was a hell of a cell. And both times, Chris Jericho interfered in those matches, leading to Kevin Owens retaining the championship. On the heels of that, Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho were later announced as co-captains for Team Raw for the traditional Survivor Series match, as they would face Team Smackdown for brand supremacy. Joining Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho were Braun Strowman, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins. At the event, Team Raw would emerge victorious, no doubt under Owens' leadership, and securing brand supremacy for that year. Following that successful showing, Kevin Owens would defeat Seth Rollins in a no DQ match the following night on Raw to once again retain the championship. But again, it was following the interference of Chris Jericho. We may see a theme and a pattern forming here. As champion and with all the momentum, Roman Reigns would issue a challenge to Kevin Owens, who stated he didn't need Chris Jericho's help to defeat Roman Reigns. And with the perfect place to launch Kevin Owens into the next level, Kevin Owens would suffer his first pinfall loss since becoming champion after losing a non-title match to Roman Reigns. In turn, this earned Roman Reigns a WWE Universal Championship match against Kevin Owens, a yet another fondly remembered pay-per-view, for historical purposes, of course. Roadblock, End of the Line. And you can't just say Roadblock, but at Roadblock, End of the Line, after failing to help Chris Jericho in his match against Seth Rollins, Owens would retain the championship by disqualification when Chris Jericho would intentionally attack and use the code breaker. Reigns would get a rematch at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, but it was held under a specific stipulation that would see Chris Jericho, who would
pin... the Queensberry rules.
That's exactly right. Who would pin Roman Reigns into handicap match as he and Owens were facing Roman Reigns to win, and he actually won the United States Championship in that handicap match. But Jericho was to be suspended above the ring in what you might call a shark-proof cage. And on January 29th at the Royal Rumble event, Kevin Owens climbed the mountain again, he defeated Roman Reigns in a no DQ match without the interference of Y2J. But he did have help from Braun Strowman. The following night on Raw, Owens had to defend the championship against Strowman because Strowman would reveal that he only helped Owens retain the championship because he disliked the big dog and because Owens had already promised him a title shot. So he felt the need to help Kevin out. The good news for Kevin is he would again retain his title that night against Braun Strowman because Roman Reigns would attack both men during the match. So the decision was thrown out.
No, I love the booking where it's like, oh, you get a title match because, well, I promised you a title match. Yet, at other times, when someone's promised a title match, it's like, well, you haven't earned it. You have to defeat these other people in order to get one.
I can't explain it, brother. I just report the news. I can't explain it. I can't bring logic to this. And speaking of logic, on the February 6th episode of Monday Night Raw, Kevin Owens was challenged by a returning legend, Bill Goldberg, to a championship match at WWE Fastlane, which Jericho accepted on behalf of Kevin Owens.
Of course you did.
And Kevin really wasn't very happy with this. It was much to his dismay, you might say. And on the February 13th episode of Monday Night Raw, Chris Jericho would host a festival of friendship for he and KO. Kevin was just not impressed with Jericho's humor and his ideas. But instead, Kevin being the good friend that he is, he chose to give a gift to Chris Jericho, the gift of a new list. And what would be...
Oh, not the gift of Jericho?
No. Jericho is a gift that keeps on giving. But in what would be one of the best angles in most recent memory, when Jericho realized that on that list it said the list not of Jericho, but the list of KO, and his name was the first name on it.
How come my name's on this list?
Exactly. It was so perfect. Kevin Owens would turn on Jericho. He would bust the painting, the portrait over his head, just viciously beat him down. And you could begin to see Kevin Owens getting his stride back again, his heel stride. He was absolutely on fire. Kevin Owens at Fastlane walked in with tremendous heat, with the potential to get to nail the pop-up power bomb on Goldberg, vanquish this challenger, man, give him his credibility a huge boost. And with that in mind, there's no way WWE could mess this up. What they had on their hands,
they did. They certainly did.
They certainly did. Sadly, that's just not what happened. Kevin Owens would lose the title to Bill Goldberg in a whopping Iron Man time of 22 seconds.
Against Goldberg, that kind of is an Iron Man time.
Let people get less hurt, the faster it is. I'll say that. Mm-hmm. And all kidding aside, I did love Goldberg in WCW. I'm still a Goldberg guy.
Oh, me too.
But this wasn't the right time.
Absolutely.
I don't feel. Because, man, you had something there. Because he had done what most people cannot do, and that is get the crowd to react to believe he had just laid a vicious beating. But you know what? It was in line with what he was doing in NXT. This is the Kevin Owens character. But that's not what we got. His championship reign would end at exactly 188 days on the main roster.
And here's the other thing about losing to Goldberg. The way that they did it is what really bothered me. You have him ready to, he's all psyched up. He's ready to take on Goldberg. And then Jericho's music hits. And he's like, what's going on? Turns around, boom, spear, jackhammer, it's over. It's just like, you really couldn't have given him a little more than that. I feel like that it hurt him as a character on the TV show just so much. I mean, there's being surprised, and then there's taking a Goldberg spear and jackhammer. It's just like, come on. Yeah. What year is this?
Here's the thing. Do you remember when Goldberg had his match at Survivor Series against Brock Lesnar? That was a shock. Mm-hmm. I was like, holy cow. Look what they're fixing to do. I was like, wow. Man, I was jacked up for that.
But that's Brock Lesnar we're talking about here.
That's what I'm saying. He's an established persona.
He's well established. And, regardless of whether he's established or not, just look at the dude. Kevin Owens doesn't look like Brock Lesnar. I mean, walking away from the Goldberg match, it was really hard to it was hard to watch. As a Kevin Owens fan, it just
It is, because it just reinforces so much, at least for a Kevin Owens fan, the belief that WWE just doesn't see it in you.
yeah.
And that's heartbreaking, because one thing we will talk about many times on the show is we invest a lot of time in the characters, in the stories, and going back and reviewing for this show. We put a lot of work into it, and we love what we saw. And sometimes we go back and watch and go, oh, that doesn't hold up as well, or oh, I don't remember it exactly that way. But we're invested. When you bring people to the main roster and then yo-yo them, or worse, it's hard. It's really hard as a fan to stay engaged, not only with the product but with those characters. The following night on Raw, again, he can't get a return title match because that was reserved for someone else at WrestleMania. But Owens would accept Chris Jericho's challenge for a match at WrestleMania 33. So apparently he's not interested in getting the championship back. On April 2nd, as long as Jericho would defend his United States Championship. And on that night, Kevin Owens would reclaim gold on the main roster. He would defeat Chris Jericho and win the United States Championship. He would accomplish in defeating Chris Jericho what he could not do against John Cena the year previously. On the April 11th episode of Smackdown Live, Kevin Owens was traded to the Smackdown brand as part of the 2017 WWE Superstar Shakeup. The good news is Kevin would defend his newly won title against Chris Jericho at another very historical pay-per-view, WWE Payback, with the winner going on to SmackDown as well. Kevin would begin referring to himself as the face of America. He began to sport a little bit different look. He trimmed his beard up. He wore his hair down. He was wearing a suit. It happened. However, at WWE Payback on April 30th, Kevin Owens would, yep, you guessed it, he lost the title back to Chris Jericho, thereby ending his reign at 28 days. However, Kevin Owens would reclaim the title on the May 2nd episode of SmackDown Live by defeating Chris Jericho and then attacking him and injuring him after the match as well.
I guess that's redemption.
I guess. Somewhat, yeah. Still hasn't gotten his world title rematch, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
It's a stepping stone, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's walking away from Jericho, with the title, but again, he was Universal Champion. At that time, that was the top belt in WWE. It wasn't even the WWE title at the time. It was the Universal title that was kind of considered as the number one title because it was on Monday Night Raw. So you've got him not only losing that title, then he's in a feud not with Goldberg, who took his title. No, he's taking on Chris Jericho because he got distracted in his title match. That didn't barely even started. And then so all right, so here he's a step down with the title, and Goldberg's nowhere to be seen. This is great storytelling here.
Well, I have some good news for you, Mark. All is not lost, because at WWE Backlash, Kevin Owens would successfully overcome the challenge of the phenomenal AJ Styles and retain the United States Championship in convincing fashion. Well, actually, it was a count-out victory, but you take what you can get. Owens would earn...
I guess I'm convinced that he didn't make it back to the ring in time.
Well, that's it. Yeah, he couldn't get back in. I mean, look, nobody wants another butt whipping. Okay, just stay down. Kevin Owens would earn his spot as one of the participants in the Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank, that particular WWE pay-per-view.
It's amazing how that stuff lines up like that.
And it was absolutely probably the most stacked roster in a Money in the Bank ladder match, going back to the very inception of that type of match. Competing alongside Kevin Owens.
Well, it couldn't have outdone this year's Money in the Bank match.
This one blows away every year. And let me just tell you who competed in it. First and foremost, former NXT champion Sami Zayn. Former NXT champion Shin. That's Shinsuke Nakamura. To the uninformed. AJ Styles. Dolph Ziggler. And yes, you knew I'd find a way to get this in. Good friend of the show, Baron Corbin. In fact, this would be a bit of a coming out party for Baron Corbin as he would emerge victorious in this particular rendition of this year's Money in the Bank ladder match. However, not one to look down on himself. During a house show at Madison Square Garden on July 7th, Kevin Owens entered as United States Champion, defending against AJ Styles, only to walk out without his title. His title reign was ended at 66 days.
I guess that's better than 28.
Well, I guess it was done to pop a house show. It is MSG. I know it's very special to the McMahon family. Kevin Owens would regain that championship at WWE Battleground, which was tremendous, but he lost it back to AJ 2 days later on Smackdown. This time having to defend it not just against AJ Styles, but in a triple threat match against Chris Jericho, who was returning from injury as well. The following week, Kevin Owens finally was able to get somebody to agree to a title rematch. But unfortunately, AJ retained the strap after the referee did not see Kevin Owens' shoulder up during the 3 count. Because the referee had been accidentally struck, and I'm using my fingers to quote here, by Owens a little bit earlier during the matchup. After the match, Kevin Owens would demand a rematch with a competent official, not the one that works for AEW, obviously. And the SmackDown Live general manager Daniel Bryan then made a match and said, okay, Kevin Owens, AJ Styles for the United States Championship at SummerSlam. But he decided to add just a little bit more intrigue into the match. He made SmackDown Commissioner Shane McMahon to be the special guest referee. I ask you, what could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Well, during that time, something went right. At least
Shane O'Mac.
At least the way you feel, Mark, something went right. He dropped the whole being the face of America gimmick, and he reverted back to the prize fighter attitude that we were far more familiar with, shedding the suits and getting back to his roots a little bit. He dropped the America promos, the oriented promos he was doing. And at SummerSlam, I have to report the truth, Kevin Owens was again defeated by AJ Styles. But there was a catch to this match, and that is both wrestlers were arguing very bad calls by Shane O'Mac in his decisions. And on the August 22nd episode of SmackDown Live, Kevin Owens would again demand a rematch, which Shane McMahon allowed, this time with our good friend Baron Corbin as a special guest referee. But once again, Kevin Owens left without the championship after Corbin would walk out of the match and Shane O'Mac would take over as referee. And in doing so, in arguing with Kevin Owens, he would distract him just enough for AJ Styles to get the pinfall victory. The stipulation going to the match also meant that as long as AJ Styles held the championship, Kevin Owens could not challenge for the U.S. title again, and thereby effectively ending his feud with AJ Styles at that time. On the September 5th episode of SmackDown Live, Kevin Owens would demand another shot at the U.S. title anyway. Shane refuses and says, no, you agreed to it, not as long as AJ Styles is the champion. And in spite of the deck being stacked against him, Owens began to vent months of frustration by insulting Shane McMahon. And then he may have taken it a little far because he began to insult little Shane's children, which caused Sweat O'Mac to attack Kevin Owens.
Sweat O'Mac.
And he was lathered up by that point. And as a result, Shane would be ultimately suspended in his role as SmackDown Commissioner. Daniel Bryan announced that due to this, Mr. McMahon himself would appear on SmackDown Live the following week. And we know that's a big deal because there's no chance when Mr. McMahon is in the house.
No chance in hell.
That's right. And on September 12th, a very fateful episode of SmackDown, Vince McMahon would announce Kevin Owens would face the product of his loins, Shane McMahon, in a Hell in a Cell match at, can you guess, Mark?
Royal Rumble?
Close. It's within 4 months of the Rumble.
Backlash?
Close. We'll try again.
I don't know. I'm running out of shows here.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and give you the answer.
The Great American Bash.
Close. No, but it's similarly themed. Hell in a Cell. They're going to do a Hell in a Cell match at Hell in a Cell.
My next guess was Bash at the Beach.
Again, you were working your way up there.
You know.
Well, keep the bashes coming. That's right. Kevin Owens, like a man, would shake Vince's hand. But yet in that moment, he realized that if Vince doesn't see anything in you, what does he do, Mark? He gives up on you.
Fires your ass?
He dumps you. And that was just too much for Kevin's mind to take. He snapped in that moment. And he took an opportunity. And he headbutted the elder McMahon, causing a trickle of blood to flow. And then he would assault him repeatedly.
I mean, that's really a heck of a headbutt if he's bloodying him up.
Well,
I thought that was weird.
I don't know if it's thin-skinned or if it's pre-bladed. I don't know, but it was certainly surprising to see a 70-something-year-old man bleeding on my television in a wrestling ring. With, again, Kevin Owens going through a lot. At Hell in a Cell, he would achieve a bit of a measure of revenge as he defeated Shane McMahon at Hell in a Cell after old friend and old foe Sami Zayn interfered, and he actually pulled Owens off the announce table. Shane was going to do an elbow drop off the top of the cell, which he did do, but fortunately for Kevin, Sami Zayn had pulled him to safety.
That was a heck of a visual.
It was. God bless him for selling out. I wouldn't do it. Okay. On the following episode of Smackdown Live, Sami Zayn would cut a promo, and he would refer to Kevin Owens as his brother. That's why he helped Kevin win rather than let Shane win, because Owens is like a brother. They fight, they have issues, but they're very close. And on the October 17th episode,
who's lying about their last name here?
I'm not going to say. I'm just going to say that on October 17th, the New Brothers of Destruction, dare I say that, would face off against Shin and the Apex Predator, Randy Orton, in a tag match. It was in the main event, and the brand new Brotherhood would defeat Randy Orton and Shinsuke after Zayn scored a low blow on Randy Orton. There were a lot of low blows going on that year on the SmackDown brand. It was happening.
Specifically on the SmackDown brand.
It was an epidemic. In the build-up to Survivor Series that year,
it was it was the hip and cool thing to do.
You know what? You do what the other cool kids are doing. That's what I do. Go clubbing, just find whatever the other cool kids are doing and try and emulate it. Well, leading up to Survivor Series, neither Kevin Owens nor Sami Zayn were deemed worthy of having a spot on Team SmackDown. They were put in individual matches against Shinsuke Nakamura and Randy Orton. Neither one of them were able to defeat Nakamura nor Orton, so they were left off the team. On the November 7th episode of SmackDown, without a whole lot to do, because remember, this was during the hashtag Occupy Raw back and forth between Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn were put into a feud with The New Day. And on the November 14th episode of SmackDown Live, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn would fight Xavier Woods and Big E. However, The Shield, as part of Raw's unprovoked invasion of SmackDown, hashtag Occupy Raw, it backfired. And KO and Sami Zayn proved their superior intellect by rolling out of the ring and escaping, leaving the New Day to be destroyed by The Shield. At the Survivor Series, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn were finally able to find their moment. And during the main event for brand supremacy, they may not have been good enough to carry the blue brand, but they were smart enough to attack Shane McMahon during the main event. But unfortunately, it backfired because McMahon single-handedly, with a Herculean effort, was able to attack both men with a steel chair. Not only that, but the Viper Randy Orton was able to nail an RKO out of nowhere onto Kevin Owens. Unfortunately, all that would be for naught, as Team SmackDown would still get destroyed and lose the brand supremacy to Team Raw. And if you're a fan of Bruce Pritchard's podcast, you'll be familiar with the term Hogan must pose. Mm-hmm. That's the way we have to end the show. Apparently, it's the same thing with Shane McMahon. Shane must go over no matter the odds. He must look strong.
He must sweat too.
He certainly fits the bill. On the November 21st episode of SmackDown, Shane McMahon was livid with both Owens and Zayn, was going to fire both of them. But Daniel Bryan, being the good businessman he is, if you watch Total Bellas, you can certainly see the business acumen of the Bryan family. He let cooler heads prevail. And he made a tag team match. It's KO It's Sami Zayn against the New Day in a lumberjack match. And you wouldn't expect this by what I presented, Mark. But Owens and Zayn overcame the odds. They were victorious. But the New Day, of all people, it's a new day. Yes, it is. But it wasn't, because in a very poor display of sportsmanship, they attacked Sami Zayn after the match. Thank God, Kevin Owens was barely able to escape.
Probably a poor display of entertainment as well, too.
They felt the power of the New Day that night, I'll tell you that right now. At WWE Clash of Champions, facing certain termination if they failed, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defeated Randy Orton and Shinsuke Nakamura in yet another tag team match. But consider this. Not only were their jobs on the line, but they had to contend with Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan as special guest referees. That's a lot of pressure, brother.
That is a lot of pressure.
That's a lot. Going into 2018, Kevin Owens would compete for AJ Styles' WWE Championship. First, he participated in a handicap match with Sami Zayn against AJ at the Royal Rumble, unsuccessfully. It's very rare. But yes, a person can defeat two former world champions in a match. At Fastlane in March, he also attempted to dethrone AJ Styles, was not able to get the job done. Owens would be placed in a six-pack challenge facing Dolph Ziggler, our friend Baron Corbin, the returning John Jack Cena, and Sami Zayn. But unfortunately, Kevin Owens would not come out with a victory in that match as well. And after months and months of teasing Daniel Bryan getting physically involved in a contest, it was announced that Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn would continue their feud against what they perceived to be the corporate shenanigans of Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon would draw Daniel Bryan in. We would have a tag match at New Orleans in WrestleMania 34. But unfortunately, the return of Daniel Bryan was just too much to overcome, and Sami Zayn would submit that night to the Yes Lock.
No.
Yes. And the night after WrestleMania 34, Kevin Owens is now a free agent. And he shows up on Raw along with Sami Zayn. They're wanting Kurt Angle, the Raw general manager, give him a job. Well, Angle's job was shaky at best. Remember, he almost lost it at Survivor Series. So Angle makes a match between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Says, tell you what, fellas, whoever wins the match, you get the Raw contract. The problem is the match ends in a no contest. So they're still free agents hanging out there. But I want to take a moment here and say thank God for more cooler heads prevailing. And this unconscionable decision for them to be free agents was overruled, as both men would be awarded, dare I say rewarded, with Raw contracts by Raw Commissioner Stephanie McMahon. Later that night,
I always hated Angle as commissioner or general manager. You know, I mean, there was that one time way back in the earlier days of Smackdown, like back before he left. I think he was nursing an injury that they plugged him in as a general manager for a little while there. But aside from that, every single time that he's been on as some kind of like figurehead of some sort, I don't know. He just doesn't work in that role for me. Maybe it's just me, but it just, I don't know. I don't really like. It just doesn't fit for me. I don't know.
If I remember right, that was the time. That was when he was in a wheelchair, and Teddy Long ended up replacing him.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty good. I enjoyed Heel Kurt Angle as a general manager. I wasn't a huge fan. I was not a huge fan of the face Kurt Angle as a general manager. I agree with you on that. But again, like I said, thank God for Stephanie McMahon, the Raw Commissioner. And she would conceive a match that is unlike any we will ever see, nor one we have seen other than this one night. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, fresh off their brand new contracts, would assemble themselves with perhaps the strongest roster of heels ever assembled in one match. As they would team up in a 10-man tag, it would be Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, joined by The Miz, Curtis Axel, and Bo Dallas.
Wow.
And I'm just going to say it as I remember it and as I watched it this week to refresh myself.
Did you Bo leave?
I was Bo leaving going into the match, but I left heartbroken because, Mark, in an upset for the ages. Now
It wasn't awesome.
We are both major sports fans. But I'm going to put this along the lines of the Jets winning the Super Bowl in the 60s, or the Miracle Mets, or the Tampa Bay Lightning winning Lord Stanley's Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Owens' team would lose. And I want you to hear who they lost to, because if you went to Vegas and you had your full paycheck, I can't believe anyone would lay any money on the team that they were upset by. Let me tell you who they were.
How many of them was it?
It's a 5-on-5 match.
Let me guess. We got John Cena. We've got Roman Reigns. We've got Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
The Rock.
Okay.
And The Undertaker.
Well, you got them all right, except you didn't.
Damn.
I know. Let me tell you who they lost to.
And that again, close.
I know you were just a bit outside. Think about the talent on one side versus what I would consider to be inferior talent. Let me just name down the roster. There was this young upstart by the name of Finn Balor. There was a future
Monday. Smile a lot, from what I understand.
Well, he had every reason to that night because they pulled off just a major victory. There was a future Monday Night Messiah by the name of Seth Rollins. Don't know whatever happened to that fella. There was a future monster among men by the name of Braun Strowman. There was the not quite yet almighty Bobby Lashley and the soon-to-be glorious less Bobby Roode. Those 5 men stole a victory, upset perhaps the greatest five-person team you'll ever see.
Yeah, and Bobby Lashley, man, the dude looks like $1 million, but they just, in WWE, they just don't know how to use the guy properly.
They don't. And you look about him and Bobby Roode putting these 2 guys with 3 main event players, and you still couldn't do more with them. I mean, here's a chance to elevate. And for whatever reason, they just won't. But a dark cloud began to hang over Kevin Owens' career after that. Because, again, it's very difficult to recover from those types of losses. Very few teams are able to do that. You remember the Patriots losing in the Super Bowl, losing their undefeated season. Or Virginia, the Cavaliers in the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. They were the first number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament to lose to a 16 seed. It's hard to recover from that. And Kevin Owens began to struggle because on the May 7th episode of Raw, Kevin Owens would lose his Money in the Bank qualifying match. Remember, he's been in the first 2 that he's been in the company, but this one he would not be in as he lost to Braun Strowman. However, in hopes of revenge, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn came together again to make the Brothers of Destruction 2.0.
That was the Monster in the Bank thing, right?
It was.
Oh.
In hopes of revenge, they came together, Mark. They had a plan. They laid it out. And at WWE Backlash in 2018, they would unfortunately fall to Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley in a match they were largely uncompetitive in. On the May 14th episode of Monday Night Raw, Kevin Owens was given another well-earned opportunity to qualify for the Money in the Bank ladder match. And Kevin Owens would actually this time overcome the odds. He defeated both Lashley and Elias in a triple threat match. But as you already alluded to, Owens would be unsuccessful because Braun Strowman would win the Money in the Bank ladder match that year. But in the following weeks, there was a shift in Kevin Owens' mind. He began to sense there was an opportunity for friendship and common ground. And Kevin Owens would attempt to develop a friendship with Braun Strowman to replace an injured Sami Zayn. But regrettably, Braun Strowman, he couldn't see the possibilities. He foolishly rejected Kevin Owens' offer of friendship and even committed willful destruction of property by destroying Kevin Owens' car. At Extreme Rules, Kevin Owens would face Braun Strowman in a cage match, and before you get all worked up, let me share some good news with you. Kevin Owens would win the match. In fact, he did it in a genius way. I mean, this is brilliant, Mark. He tricked Braun Strowman into throwing Kevin Owens, pronouns pal, off the top of the cage and through the announcer's table. His feet touched the floor first. I mean, everything touched the floor first. But his feet touched the floor first. Therefore, he won that match at Extreme Rules. That's a huge win for him.
Well, you really don't do Braun Strowman any favors there either. You know, I mean, you're in a cage match, and it's just like, I get the like outsmarting him and stuff, but like then you just make him look like an idiot.
Well, they certainly didn't do that going forward.
I'm in what kind of a match? Oh, you mean like that guy can't get out of the ring before me? Okay, all right, I got it now. Sorry, I missed that part of the rule book.
See, now you're getting it, Mark. Now you're understanding. Some people might say, "Man, that's a real letdown, man, to get thrown off the top of cage." But remember, he won, and that was a clutch victory for Kevin Owens. He needed that to stop the bleeding, so to speak. He was clutch. And on July 23rd episode of Monday Night Raw, Raw Commissioner Stephanie McMahon, and may I just say, for the record, the more reasonable McMahon, would grant Kevin Owens an opportunity to face Braun Strowman at SummerSlam.
There's issues when she's the more reasonable one.
It's going to hell in a handbasket. That's what's happening right here at this point. She grants Kevin Owens an opportunity to face Braun Strowman at SummerSlam. And here's the stipulation she was willing to give him. If Kevin Owens wins the match, he gets Braun Strowman's Money in the Bank contract. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, Mark, but the winner of the Money in the Bank match carries a briefcase around. And inside of it, there's a contract that can be cashed in at any time. And by any time, I mean during a WWE event, not like in an airport like you normally would. Like you see the 24/7 title, sometimes contested. You would think somebody would try that at least once, but WWE hasn't thought to do that yet. Fingers crossed.
Hopefully you don't listen to this. We want more ears, but the right ones.
Certain ears. Well, unfortunately, Kevin Owens' luck would run out as he was defeated by Braun Strowman that night. He's battered. He's bruised. He's given an Intercontinental Championship match against Seth Rollins on the August 27th edition of Raw, but the mental fragility of Kevin Owens began to seep through as he sat in the middle of the ring, and he said 2 words, 5 letters, I quit. # Gordon Soley. On the September 3rd episode of Monday Night Raw, Kevin Owens returned to attack Bobby Lashley. And the following week, he attacked Tyler Breeze before their match. Now, you may be asking yourself, why didn't he just beat Tyler Breeze in 3 minutes like everybody else? The answer is, I don't know. Instead, Kevin Owens went on to explain he had quit the week prior, but he was talked into coming back by acting general manager Baron Corbin, who promised him there would be no repercussions for anything he does.
Yeah, I thought we might have actually gotten away with him not being on this episode.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Baron Corbin. Thank goodness for him. The show could have been shorter than it actually ran if it had not been for him to drag the show out. But it does make one wonder if there are no repercussions for Kevin Owens. Does that mean repercussions from law enforcement as well? And how was Braun Strowman able to destroy Kevin Owens' car, but there be no legal repercussions? These are just things I think about when I lay in bed at night and I can't sleep.
Minds want to know.
We really do. In his first major outing following his false eye quitting, it was at the Super Showdown event. Kevin Owens teaming with Elias, but unfortunately this was in a losing effort against Bobby Lashley and John Cena. On the October 8th, and John Jack, but overseas he's just John Cena. On the October 8th episode of Monday Night Raw, Kevin Owens lost more than a match to Bobby Lashley, although he did. The following afternoon, WWE.com would announce that Kevin Owens suffered injuries to both his knees, and it was going to require surgery on both. But I want you to think, that hurts me just thinking about. But fear not, though, because all was not lost. For just a few months later, on the February 26th, 2019 edition of SmackDown Live, Kevin Owens did something he'd never done in either NXT or as a part of the main roster. Kevin Owens became a face. And he did so replacing Kofi Kingston in the WWE Championship match at Fastlane against Daniel Bryan per Vince McMahon's orders. But there's some confusion here. He's a face who's effectively taking the place of the face that everyone wants to see in the actual title match. So the question becomes, is he really a face? Yeah, well, that's how they were portraying him. It's a bit convoluted there if you take 2 seconds to think about it.
And I think that's so amazing. You have Vince out there playing up, Kofi's just a B+ player, basically they're redoing the whole Daniel Bryan story all over again here. And his choice, instead of Kofi Kingston, is Kevin Owens.
Yep.
It's just, I don't know, something just didn't really mesh there. I understood back when Daniel Bryan, with the whole Daniel Bryan thing, that oh well, the main event that we want is Randy Orton versus Batista. Yeah, I get that. Those are two dudes who were top players, during their times. No surprise there. But Kevin Owens, just, I'm sorry, he's not Batista. It's just not. I don't know. He's not established like that. At least on the main roster of WWE, he's not. I don't know.
And we've seen in the Kevin Owens' run to this point a lot of rehashing, and we're going to see more here shortly. But I wrote it like this. It's a heel move by Mr. McMahon, but KO was supposed to be a face nonetheless. And at the pay-per-view, WWE would muddy the waters even further because they would announce that the returning WWE superstar, then Mustafa Ali, would be added to the match as well. And I'm pausing because I'm still not sure why. There. Yeah. So it's now a triple threat match. And oh, by the way, Kevin Owens didn't win the title. So what was the point of all that big hullabaloo in return other than the needed warm bodies? Well, at WrestleMania 35, we would all know that Kofi Kingston would dethrone Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. But then a new storyline would develop. Kevin Owens, who was a face, congratulated Kofi for winning the belt and would become an honorary third member of the New Day because Big E was out dealing with an injury. So he was now one of the trifecta. The problem was, internally, Daniel Bryan suffered an injury at WrestleMania in his title defense. SmackDown didn't have a lot of top-tier heels. So the idea was put in motion, put in play, we're going to flip Kevin again. So he re-debuted in February, at the end of February, and here we are in middle of April, and he's flipping already.
Is Big Show not available or something? Yeah.
Apparently not. And on the April 23rd episode of SmackDown Live, Kevin Owens, and I put in quotes here, shockingly turned on Kofi Kingston and attacked both he and Xavier Woods.
Quote-unquote shockingly.
Exactly. Proclaiming that he didn't want the WWE Championship. He needed the WWE Championship.
And just as Bret Hart always had told Owen in that one interview, sometimes you don't always get what you want. Sometimes you just get what you need.
Well, he was in need, brother. And unfortunately, it really was just a shoehorned role. Kingston needed a challenger not named Dolph Ziggler because he's a dangerous opponent. So Kingston would actually challenge Kevin Owens to a match at Money in the Bank and offered to defend his title, put it on the line. However, Kevin could not stick his claim to the title that night. Kofi Kingston would retain. And at Stomping Grounds, Kevin Owens would team with Sami Zayn, and they would get, I guess, some measure of satisfaction in defeating returning Big E and Xavier Woods. So he's feuded with New Day quite a bit over the last few months. On the July 2nd episode of SmackDown Live, things begin to change. Kevin Owens began to question Shane McMahon's decisions and his underhanded tactics. Now, remember, this isn't the first time he's done that. He did this all of last year, but he was a heel then. Mm-hmm. Well, now he's questioning the tactics again. And Shane O'Mac, he's trying to make peace. He teams Kevin Owens with Dolph Ziggler, puts them together as a tag team. In a shocking turn of events, there's miscommunication. They lose their match.
Dolph Ziggler, tag team partner to the Stars.
He's everywhere. Look, true story. I go to lay down in my bed the other night. My wife had fallen asleep watching Ms. and Mrs. And this one episode that was on TV, there's Dolph Ziggler on my TV. I can't escape. I just can't. If this angle feels familiar, it's because it is. The now and again newly turned face, I guess, because that hadn't really been established, would share his disgust for Shane McMahon's constant dominance on TV. This was interesting for a face to do. And in the voice of JR, he ran like a scalded dog when security was called on him. So he didn't stand up and fight like a man. He ran for his life. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is how we get our new face over. We have him run away from security.
You should start rapping because he just ran like a scalded dog. Shit! You rhymed something. I just lost it.
You know what? I'm like men on a mission, man. I'm built like Mo, so I can definitely see that. Greatest thing Jerry Lawler ever said when he got thrown out of the Rumble, I think it was the 94, 95 Rumble. No more Mo. Still remember that to this day.
No more Mo.
No more Mo. Still good stuff.
Mo was on a mission.
He was. Later that night, Owens would interfere in a match between Roman Reigns and our newly burgeoning friend of the show, also Dolph Ziggler. And not only would he interfere in the match, he would hit Shane McMahon with a Canadian stunner, I guess. I guess this turned him face officially again, I guess. What was his reward for this? How were they going to strap the Rocket to his back in this situation? Well, they absolutely were going to strap the Rocket to his back because Extreme Rules, Kevin Owens would face Dolph Ziggler. But this time, he would do something a little bit differently in the match. He would pin Dolph Ziggler in approximately 17 seconds. That's right, boys and girls. That's right, boys and girls.
That's faster than Goldberg beat him.
Think about this. The guy who was such a tough challenge and threat to Kofi Kingston's title reign. The guy, Shinsuke Nakamura, took 48 minutes to beat in his debut. And I digress and I embellish only slightly. Was pinned in 17 seconds. Dear Lord. At the very special episode that has been affectionately known as Smackville, KO he not only walked in with, he didn't just walk with, Mark, he defeated Elias, who at that time was one of Shane McMahon's loyalists. And at SummerSlam on August 11th, Kevin Owens defeated Shane McMahon, the product of Vince's loins, in a match where if Kevin Owens had lost, he would have lost his job. And as a result, the rebuilding of Kevin Owens was underway. He was announced as a participant in the King of the Ring tournament, and he did advance all the way to the finals. Well, actually, he didn't. He lost to Elias in the first round.
Oh.
But this was due to Shane McMahon serving as a special guest referee. So you can certainly explain that. Well, the odds were stacked. The odds were stacked against him. On the September 10th episode of SmackDown Live,
would have had a better chance if Stephanie was a referee.
Thank God for Stephanie McMahon. I think that's the quote of the show. Yeah. But Shane McMahon would openly and defiantly fire Kevin Owens after Shane McMahon tapped out to Chad Gable in the King of the Ring semifinal match because Kevin Owens was oddly assigned as a special guest referee. No, I can't explain why.
I was going to say, who assigned him as a special guest referee?
Exactly. Because Shane McMahon was SmackDown commissioner, so he had ultimate authority.
Was that ever explained? Not
as far as I can tell.
That's storytelling right there.
Or I just didn't dig deep enough because I still have a few brain cells left. The following week, Kevin Owens couldn't attend the show because he's fired, Mark. And you know how it is when you're fired. You're escorted off the property. They clean out your desk. You're done. Clean your locker room. You're out. Kevin Owens...
Never seen or heard from again.
No, see, that's not how Kevin Owens rolls. He's French-Canadian. And they're crafty. See, Kevin Owens began to take legal action. He filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against Shane McMahon. And as many of you would know, as WWE is a publicly traded company, and under that type of duress and that type of negativity and publicity, the only way WWE settles disputes is not in the boardroom, not in the courtroom, it's in that very ring. And on October 4th, an episode of SmackDown, both competitors put their careers on the line. Kevin Owens' active wrestling career and Shane McMahon's career entirely within WWE. That means as a competitor, that means as the SmackDown commissioner. And in the blow struck against his corporate overlords, Kevin Owens scored perhaps the biggest win of his career by defeating the best in the world. No, not that best in the world. This best in the world, Shane McMahon, in a ladder match. And as per the pre-match stipulation, Shane O'Mac, Sweat O'Mac, Shane was fired on the spot. But not before Kevin Owens had one last parting shot for him and nailed him with, again, I'm going to call it the Canadian Stunner. Whew, man. I got to tell you what, Mark. That was a lot of effort to free SmackDown so that it could be a place. Remember when it was referred to as Land of Opportunities? Well, it was going to be a
Paul
land of
Heyman's land of
opportunities.
opportunities.
Not only that, but Kevin Owens was finally free to have opportunities on the Blue brand. And he would settle into his opportunity to build the Blue brand back up from how Shane had torn it down. Actually, no, that didn't happen because on October 11th, Kevin Owens was drafted to the Raw brand. So all of that to free the SmackDown brand, to win the feud, only to be traded to Raw the next week.
But who traded him?
It was just part of the draft. He just got sent to Raw.
Oh, so it wasn't like one of these other trades.
Exactly. So let's take an account here real quick, boys and girls. All that effort to defy and displace a McMahon resulted in nothing.
The new McMahon to take out.
That's exactly right. However, there's some good news to come in all of this, because in what would be a very shocking moment, on November 23rd, 2019, at NXT TakeOver War Games, Kevin Owens would jump back to the Black and Gold brand. In fact, he would appear as Tommaso Ciampa's mystery fourth partner for the War Games match against the Undisputed Era, being Adam Cole, baby, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong. Team Ciampa would ultimately emerge victorious. But there was a toll to be taken, because at Survivor Series, Owens made up part of Team Raw, but see, they lost to the Ultimate winners, Team NXT.
You know, I have just one question for you, though.
Go ahead.
How much fish could Bobby Fish fry if Bobby Fish could fry fish?
I hate you. That's tremendous. I can't do it. Being from the South, I'm going to guess a whole lot, because we do like our catfish down this way. Little smoked mullet wouldn't hurt neither, but that's neither here nor there. The next night on Raw, following his defeat at Survivor Series, the Team Raw captain, and Becky Lynch's husband, I might say, Seth Rollins, would criticize the Raw roster. Specifically, he questioned Kevin Owens' loyalty. Because, see, Kevin Owens had made time to appear on the Black and Gold brand at War Games. He wasn't focused on the real task at hand. Kevin Owens, in similar to someone who might have gone by the moniker Stone Cold, wasn't enthralled and just stunned Rollins and walked away. Coincidentally, after that, Kevin Owens would become the target of the Authors of Pain. Remember them? Akam, Razor, the AOP?
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently they were still up there. No, I kid because I care. But Kevin Owens would accuse Seth Rollins of being behind AOP's attacks. But the soon-to-be alleged Messiah, he said, look, they're not with me. They're not amongst my followers. Although Rollins would ultimately have the AOP join him. However, Rollins would finally and officially refer to himself as the Monday Night Messiah, even drawing in an aimless and first nameless Murphy to join the fold. Rollins and Murphy would win the Raw Tag Team Championship, and there's a reason we're covering this. Because Kevin Owens...
You wouldn't put the tag team titles on the tag team. No, let's put them on the two singles guys.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's always worked. Kevin Owens would cost the newly crowned tag champions their title match against the Street Profits on the March 2nd, 2020 episode of Monday Night Raw. Rollins then challenged Owens to a match at WrestleMania 36, which was accepted by Owens. And at WrestleMania, Kevin Owens defeated Seth Rollins to effectively end their feud. And with that, we have come to the close of the main roster career to this point of Kevin Owens. That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. Yeah, going into this, you know, we knew that Owens had a significantly shorter stay on the NXT brand than he did in the main roster. But how would you grade their run, his run in on the main roster? You know, of Raw, SmackDown, and
yeah. So this is a tough. Again, I feel like I'm going to say this every week. This is a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Because they yo-yoed him in a lot of places. They put him in feuds that were pointless, but that's not new to him. That's just the way they book.
Mm-hmm.
When they featured him and he's been featured a lot.
Yeah.
But when they wanted to push him, he succeeded really, really well. You know what? I'm going to say, and maybe this is personal bias, and I openly own that. I got to give him a B plus at least, because he took the opportunities and he's run with it. It's not his fault how they booked him, but he's done everything they've asked of him, and definitely made chicken salad out of some other kind of chicken. So I'm going to give him the B plus. I have to.
Yeah, I guess, hearing your explanation, I kind of have to echo your sentiment there. When given the ball, he is ready to run with it. It's just that they don't really want to give it to him very often. He's a great talent, with all the potential in the world. He really does. I've said it before. I'm a huge Kevin Steen fan. Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, whatever you want to call him. Love the dude. He's on my list of wrestlers I need to meet. Who knows what's in store for him in the future? I hope that there's another shot, or another run with the top title, whether it be WWE title or the Universal title again. I really think that they're just scratching the surface with him. He's got so much more to offer.
So he's 7 years younger than I, so he's 35. He's got a lot of life in him, and hopefully the surgeries he's had will extend his time a little bit. I'm not one of those guys who wants his wrestlers, be they men or women, out there wrestling in their 50s. I want people to be able to go home, play with their kids, not be like Mick Foley. I love Mick Foley, but you see the toll he's taken. So I hope when they're using him effectively, but not so high impact, because he's in the same lineage of Sami Zayn, Daniel Bryan. They did a lot of work on the indies. They really tore up their bodies to get to where they are, and now that they're finally making the money, unfortunately, in some cases, their body betrays them, breaks down some because of all the mileage that they have on it. I hope he's got some good years left in him and can leave on his own terms. I know he just re-signed a new contract either earlier this year or late last year, so he's locked in for 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he has a good run. Who knows how things are going to be with the world. But yeah, I agree with you. I hope he gets one more opportunity to show who he is.
Just one more match.
That's exactly right. I'll chant it. I'll stand with you and chant it.
So there you have it. Kevin Owens, he's a heck of a talent. I can't say enough good about the guy. Really.
For me, Mark, I don't know what side of the coin you come down on this. I'm a big believability guy, and when I see him and hear him, I believe. I don't think that's a character. I think that's just him turned up.
Yeah, he speaks to me.
Yeah,
he speaks to me.
He's not a character. That's just Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen. That's just who he is. He wants to fight for his family. He wants to make money so he can support his family. Yes, he wants to be a star. Yes, he wants to hold the top title, but he's a family guy. And, when you got kids, that speaks to you.
Yeah, and his main roster feud with John Cena to start off that run was just that was amazing to watch. Powerbombing John Cena, beating him, it was so terrific. It was so well done. It killed me when he didn't win the feud in the end, but I understand it's John Cena. You've got to be Hulk Hogan or The Rock or someone like that, Roman Reigns, in order to be the one who's walking away from a John Cena feud on the winning end of it. It's
but looking back 5 years ago, where could he have gone if they just had the guts to pull the trigger and made a new star?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because there's no better way than to go clean over Cena. I mean, he got the non-title victory, and that just shook everybody. What if he had gotten the title victory? There's somebody you can build around. There's a heel that's got so much life and juice in it. Oh, my gosh.
And especially since you have John Cena, who at that time, how much longer did he have before he left for acting?
I think it was the next year that he started disappearing.
Yeah, so I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Why not? Why not give it a shot and just go for it with him? Cena could springboard him to the top. I mean, you win a feud over John Cena, and you're in there in the title picture. That there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't remember who was the champion at that time. I would guess it was probably Brock Lesnar. I wouldn't be I wouldn't be unhappy to see a Kevin Owens Brock Lesnar match. I mean, Brock had his matches with Samoa Joe and a number of other guys during the time. I mean, Brock Lesnar's had great matches against much smaller guys like your AJ Styles and your Daniel Bryans. And are you going to tell me that Kevin Owens and Brock Lesnar are not going to be a great fight? I would pay good money to see that. And these are the days when we're watching pay-per-views on the network that cost you $10 a month. That's my $10 right there. NXT, like not including NXT. Give me Kevin Owens versus Brock Lesnar for the title, and I'll plunk my money down and watch it very happily. But yeah, it's just who knows? Who knows where the ceiling could have been for him? I'm glad that he's stuck it out. That he's sticking with the company. That hopefully he believes that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and he's just trying to find it.
Well, they saw what they had in him when they had the merch sales that they couldn't understand. How does that happen? How does a new guy debut on a brand without national distribution and sell that kind of merch? But it happened because
it's mind-boggling. It really is.
And at least they were smart enough to go, hey, there's something here. We need to make money. We can critique WWE till the cows come home about all the money they leave on the table. But to be fair, all of our jobs and organizations, if you're blessed to have one during this time, leave money on the table all the time. So I don't want to get into the habit of constantly beating on that. I mean, they did make money. He's been very successful for them.
Yeah.
But, could they always do more? Sure, but you can say that about most anybody. But I've enjoyed his run. I've appreciated his work and his work ethic. And I think if they ever needed to send him back down to NXT, I would be very interested to see how that turned out.
Yeah, I don't know how they debut him down there. Especially since his first run was so short, I mean, he was on top down there, but there's such a completely different crop of people down there now. It would be very interesting. Matches with him, with Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa and Keith Lee, and I mean, line them up. Adam Cole, line them all up. I'll watch them all.
Yeah, and he's that kind of talent that could transcend both the main roster and NXT, and there aren't a lot of those that can do that. But I think he'd definitely be one of them. But yeah. I've really enjoyed going through his career and seeing what he's accomplished. And in the interest of full disclosure, 2 personal notes, if you please. Got to see Kevin Owens wrestle Neville for the NXT title in a very little town just north of where I lived in Florida. I got to take my kids to see the match. And he was tremendous live in person with his heel persona and his comments. He yelled at my youngest, "Shut up and sit down or I'm coming out there." and God bless Gage, he shut up, he sat down, he did not move the rest of the match. He gripped my arm tight like I was going to save him. I'm like, kiddo, I'm not going to save you. But you know what? In the eyes of a child...
Dude, he'll kick my ass.
Exactly right. He saved me. I'm like, I ain't helping you. But that's what drew us in as wrestling fans, is the believability of it and enjoying it. And that was a very special moment that we'll always cherish. And the other personal note is, Mark, I met you for the first time. Partially because of Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
At NXT TakeOver in Brooklyn. A lot of this got started that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he definitely holds a very special place in my heart for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, that show, too, definitely holds a very special place in my heart. I still have I have a shirt that I bought at the show. They had put out a T-shirt with the match card, with the match card, and you know, it was very old school. You know, the match card, the little pictures of the guys along with their names and everything, showing the whole show. And yeah, I grabbed it. I have it still up in my closet. I'm gonna frame it and put it up in my office when it's completed down here. That show was awesome. If you have not seen NXT Takeover Brooklyn 1, go see it. What are you waiting for? It was top to bottom. It was a fantastic show.
Watch it for the matches. Watch it for the crowd, because it was a heck of a night.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that's all we have for this week's episode, unless you had anything else.
No, that's all I have for this week, man.
All right, so we will be back here next week, same time, same place, when we take on our next NXT alum. We're going big 2 weeks in a row here. Next week, it's the man, Becky Lynch, here on Hey Yo Radio. So for Scott Tyson, I'm Mark Hickenwhites, thanking all of you for your support. Hey Yo Radio is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The songs used throughout the show are properties of the respective copyright holders.